Betrayal never announces itself. It arrives with warmth, it offers you a handshake, it nods at your plans, and when the moment is right, when your guard has slipped just enough, it strikes. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He didn't simply examine betrayal, he broke it apart, named its structure, mapped the way it moves through power like a hidden toxin in wine, undetectable until it's already too late. What he revealed was this: most people are not betrayed because they are weak. They are betrayed because they fail to notice the signs, the small shifts in tone, the subtle patterns of behavior that only a sharp, disciplined mind can catch. That is why Machiavelli argued the gravest mistake a ruler or anyone in power can make is to trust too freely, or worse, to ignore evidence out of sentiment. Because betrayal never comes from enemies. It comes from those you allow too close. That is why this lesson exists, to sharpen your instincts using the precise strategies Machiavelli laid out in The Prince and Discourses on Livy. Not theory. Not recycled modern psychology, but the actual signals that expose betrayal where it lives, in politics, alliances, friendships, even families. There are 3 clear indicators that someone is not truly with you no matter what they claim. The first is what Machiavelli called shadow obedience. In The Prince, he explains how those in subordinate positions often display exaggerated loyalty, especially after defeat, demotion, or submission. They obey not out of respect for your authority, but because their power has not yet been restored. Until then, they bow. But he warned, injuries must be inflicted all at once, lest he recover the ability to retaliate. In other words, silence is not loyalty. Agreement is not alignment. When someone once challenged you, but now only mirrors your words, take note. This may not be loyalty, it may be strategy, a waiting game. Machiavelli illustrates this through Cesare Borgia's rule. After seizing Romagna, Borgia placed a ruthless governor in charge, allowed him to carry out the cruelties necessary to secure control, and then publicly executed him to win the people's favor. The deeper lesson? People fear cunning more than brutality, and the most cunning will obey only long enough to replace you. In your world, this looks like the colleague who nods at every point but never initiates, the friend who once debated you but now only agrees, the partner who suddenly withholds their own perspective. These are not signs of peace. They are signs of posture, individuals holding position until the right time to strike. The second sign is overcommunication without substance. Machiavelli stressed that genuine allies speak plainly, even when it's uncomfortable. But traitors, they flood you with words while saying nothing. In Discourses, he explains how conspirators win trust, not with silence, but with excessive praise, endless affirmations, and constant check-ins. Their purpose is not to help, but to monitor, to preserve access. He wrote, "Men are less careful how they offend one who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared. For love is preserved by obligation, which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken whenever it conflicts with self-interest. In simple terms, loyalty dies the moment it becomes inconvenient, and when betrayal is near, people often mask it with an overabundance of attention. They flatter your leadership, echo your strength, repeat your words, but they reveal nothing of their own intent. That is not support, it is surveillance. If you don't see this, you will mistake proximity for protection, but Machiavelli knew the opposite is true. Proximity raises danger, because betrayal does not come from adversaries. It comes from those who know your weaknesses, your habits, your blind spots. This is why, in The Prince, he advised rulers never to allow any one advisor or officer to grow too indispensable. Dependence creates loyalty. Irreplaceability creates ambition, and ambition breeds calculation. Look around today. The co-founder who praises every pitch but initiates nothing. The friend who checks in daily but avoids deeper accountability. The employee who flatters but keeps things vague. These are not signs of loyalty, they are signs of delay, people staying close until the right moment to act. The third sign is harder to see because it wears the disguise of growth. It is misaligned evolution. Machiavelli observed that betrayal rarely begins with hatred. It begins with divergence. In Discourses, he explains how political factions, once unified by a common cause, fracture not through conflict but through different paths of progress. When purpose no longer overlaps, loyalty dissolves into rivalry. So when someone near you begins to rise quickly, but their growth no longer intersects with yours, pay attention. Not because ambition is dangerous, but because ambition, without shared direction, breeds separation. The sharpest betrayal is structural, not emotional. It is two allies, once bound by vision, now building toward different futures. And instead of confronting the divide, they pretend, they smile, they remain present. But privately they construct a world without you in it. This is how kingdoms collapse. Not through open revolt, but through quiet realignments of those who once shared your cause. So ask yourself, who around you is evolving in ways you don't understand? Who is building something separate but silent? Who is ambitious but vague? That is not distance, it is drift. And Machiavelli warned, drift is where betrayal takes root. Power does not vanish in a moment, it erodes. Betrayal is never a single act. It is a chain of signals you chose not to see. Machiavelli never promoted paranoia. He promoted discipline. He believed not in suspecting everyone, but in recognizing patterns, subtle shifts that reveal slow betrayal, the kind that hides inside daily routine, the kind that only becomes visible when you are ruthless enough to notice. And this is where most people fail. They wait until the knife is already in their back, until the opportunity has already been stolen, until the line has already been crossed. But Machiavelli would warn, if you wait until betrayal is obvious, you've already lost. So let's go deeper into these signs and how to weaponize them. Consider shadow obedience, the first signal, the one who once debated you, but now only echoes you. The one who used to bring fresh ideas, but now only repeats yours. It feels like loyalty. It isn't. It's theater. Machiavelli learned this from observing courts. He knew that when someone suddenly stops resisting, it's not because they have changed, it's because they have calculated. When criticism disappears, it's usually because true loyalty has disappeared too. What's left is performance, a mask, while they wait for leverage. The longer you let it continue, the deeper they sink into your shadow. The remedy? You test them. In The Prince, he urged rulers to introduce disruption, change direction abruptly, announce a bold shift, provoke discomfort, then watch. If someone is genuinely aligned with your vision, they will adapt or challenge you on principle. But if they are only mirroring you, they will falter. They will hesitate, not out of care, but because the script they rehearsed no longer works. This is how you smoke out shadow obedience, by creating pressure that demands real alignment, not hollow agreement. Now to the second sign, overcommunication without clarity. This is betrayal disguised as attention. They stay close, they praise, they flatter, they check in endlessly. And yet, if you listen closely, there's nothing there. Their words carry no weight, no commitment, no risk. Machiavelli saw this in diplomats and advisors. In his letters, he noted how many pretended intimacy with rulers not to serve, but to spy. Their loyalty was a costume, and the surest way to spot it was this. They never risked anything. Real loyalty costs something. It shows itself in action, in honest disagreement, in vulnerability. But the betrayer offers only noise, circling, gathering, waiting. So how do you unmask them? You call for commitment, not in words, but in deeds. Assign responsibility. Demand contribution. Watch if they step up or stall. Machiavelli wrote, "Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance." What he meant is simple. People protect what truly matters to them. If someone avoids responsibility, avoids risk, avoids real stakes, it's because their loyalty is elsewhere, or it never existed at all. And then there is the third sign, misaligned evolution. This one is the most dangerous because it doesn't feel threatening at first. You tell yourself they're just on their own path, and sometimes that's true. But Machiavelli warned of what he called silent ambition, growth that is private, unspoken, separate, and by the time you notice they are no longer an ally, they are a competitor who knows your weaknesses. This happened repeatedly in Florentine politics. Men who once served under a leader quietly built their own networks, strengthened their influence, and then made their move when the old power turned away. The betrayal wasn't sudden. The signs were there, unspoken shifts, subtle distance, but no one acted until it was irreversible. So how do you catch misaligned evolution before it destroys you? You listen to their language. Those who are drifting stop saying we and start saying I. They begin to reference goals that don't include you. Their tone changes, their vision fractures. They still smile, still show up, but they are already walking another road. Machiavelli would urge you, notice the drift, because once someone says it outright, their decision has long been made. To test it, bring the shared vision back to the surface. Say, here's where I'm going. Are you still with me? Then watch, not their words, but their energy. Do they align, or do they hesitate? That hesitation is the beginning of a break. And every fracture ignored becomes a collapse. Here is the harsh truth. Even when people detect these signs, they rarely act. Why? Because betrayal feels personal. And when things feel personal, we hesitate. We hope. We remember better times. We wait for proof. But waiting is surrender. And Machiavelli's lesson was clear. You don't wait for betrayal to declare itself. You confront it before it breathes. Machiavelli was never emotional. He was precise. He was surgical. He wrote, "Men must be either caressed or annihilated." What he meant was simple. Halfway loyalty is a danger. There is no middle ground in allegiance. If someone around you hesitates, postures, or drifts, and you allow it to continue, you are giving betrayal the soil it needs to grow. The solution is not anger, not panic, but silence, distance, observation, and when necessary, removal. You do not explain, you do not accuse, you do not waste effort trying to change them. You simply restructure the board so they no longer hold position. This was Machiavelli's method, not cruelty, clarity. Because the most powerful act is not striking the traitor after they've betrayed. It's recognizing betrayal before they even know you've seen it, and ensuring the knife never leaves their pocket. You do not punish betrayal after it happens. You prevent it from ever becoming possible. That was Machiavelli's core principle. Because in the chessboard of power, once someone is in position to strike, it is already too late. What separates the ruler who endures from the one who falls is not strength. It is anticipation. But most people do not anticipate. They assume loyalty because someone has been close for years, because they've shared victories, shared secrets, shared silence. Yet time does not equal trust, and history does not equal allegiance. In fact, the most dangerous betrayals often come from those who have watched the longest, those who know your habits, your weaknesses, your pressure points. Machiavelli himself warned, "A wise prince ought to be cautious in accepting the services of those who have shown themselves bold in offending others, for the same boldness may be used against himself." In modern terms, if someone betrayed another to join you, they will eventually betray you to join someone stronger. This leads us to a fourth sign few ever recognize: loyalty without roots. You've seen it before. The man who switches sides too easily. The one who praises you today, but cursed another yesterday. The person who rushes into your circle after being cast out of another. They frame it as redemption, a new chance, but Machiavelli would caution, beware the soldier who deserted his last commander. Not because he was wronged, but because shifting allegiances is his habit. He may seem loyal now, but only because you are winning. The moment your power slips, he is gone. In The Prince, Machiavelli used the mercenaries of Renaissance Italy as the perfect lesson. Princes who relied on mercenaries, men who fought for money, not loyalty, always fell, because mercenaries never fought for the cause. They fought for the payout, and the moment danger outweighed reward, they disappeared. Today's mercenaries don't wear armor. They wear smiles, they speak your language. They play your game until your value fades and then they move on. So how do you detect them? Simple. You study their history. Machiavelli taught that the best predictor of future behavior is not promises, it is precedent. Ask yourself, how did this person arrive at your side? Were they drawn by shared values or by rejection from someone else? Did they build with you from the ground up, or did they appear only once you were strong? Because the one who joins only after your victory will be the first to abandon you in defeat. Here lies the real lesson. Loyalty is not measured by closeness. It is measured by cost. If someone has never paid anything to stand by you, they have not proven anything. Machiavelli was clear, the one unwilling to suffer for your gain will never suffer to defend your loss. So you test it quietly. You create small costs. You add small frictions. You introduce situations where loyalty requires inconvenience. Then watch who still remains. That is your true circle. And here we reach one of the most dangerous misconceptions, the belief that good intentions prevent betrayal. They do not. Machiavelli was ruthless in this. He saw rulers, generals, citizens destroyed because they believed loyalty rested on morality, kindness, decency. But he wrote, men are ungrateful, fickle, liars and deceivers, not because they are evil, but because their loyalty bends to interest, and when interest shifts, so does allegiance. The truth is brutal. Someone can laugh with you, cry with you, even love you, and still betray you. Not out of hatred, but out of preference, calculation, advantage. You are never safe because someone likes you. You are only safe if they see no benefit in crossing you. This is why Machiavelli trusted structure over sentiment. He didn't trust people, he trusted systems, checks, balances, dependencies. He believed every ruler must surround themselves with those who rely on them, not emotionally, but structurally, not with love, but with leverage. And so comes the strategy. Once you've identified the signs, shadow obedience, overcommunication, misaligned growth, loyalty without roots, you do not wait. You act, you restructure, you reduce their options. In The Prince, he told the story of Agathocles of Syracuse, who rose from an ordinary man to absolute ruler through ruthless control. When his generals grew too equal, too comfortable, too entitled, he eliminated them. Not from hatred, but from necessity, because comfort breeds entitlement, and entitlement breeds betrayal. But today, you don't need to destroy anyone. You need only to isolate. You separate the threat from influence. You split their power. You limit their access. You decentralize control. You strip away shadows where betrayal hides, not to shame, not to punish, but to remove the possibility of the strike. Because here is the final Machiavellian principle for this part. Prevention is stronger than retribution. You must build your power so that betrayal becomes irrelevant. Not because it will never come, but because it will never succeed. Let them whisper, let them scheme, let them smile when you turn your back. But if your foundation is strong, your circle is proven, and your vision unbreakable, their treachery will strike like a blade against steel. It won't cut, it will shatter. The most dangerous betrayal is not the one you anticipate, it's the one you excuse. You notice something small, a shift in tone, a sudden retreat, a hesitation that didn't exist before. Your instinct stirs. But then, like most people, you smother it. You justify. You tell yourself they're tired, distracted, or that it means nothing because admitting the truth would force you to act. Machiavelli would call that softness, and softness destroys rulers. History proved it again and again. Men of brilliance and power were not undone by open enemies, but by their refusal to accept that loyalty has limits. In discourses, he warned how the Roman Republic fell, not from sudden coups, but from alliances that slowly decayed while leaders stood idle, clinging to old trust. The cracks widened, loyalty dissolved, and the Republic collapsed because no one moved when it mattered. So ask yourself, what are you ignoring? What signal are you dismissing as no big deal? What shift in someone's behavior are you pretending not to notice just because acknowledging it would be uncomfortable? That moment of silence is where betrayal begins. Machiavelli despised leaders who ignored danger for the comfort of hope. He demanded vigilance, testing, probing, unsettling, not for cruelty's sake but for survival. Because power is not shielded by affection. It is shielded by foresight. Here's one of his harshest truths. A wise prince should not keep faith when doing so works against his interest. At first it sounds brutal, but it's not a celebration of treachery. It's a recognition of reality. Loyalty is conditional. Even your most trusted ally will turn if the advantage tilts far enough. Your mistake is thinking loyalty is fixed. It isn't. It shifts with opportunity. That's why he warned, don't rely on love, rely on structure. Someone who is loyal only because they have no better option is a threat, because the moment they do, they'll take it. But someone who stays because betrayal costs more than loyalty, that is someone you can count on. Machiavelli's strategy was twofold. Identify shifting interests early. Make disloyalty more painful than devotion. So what does that look like in practice? If you sense withdrawal, the silence, the polished words, the sudden lack of initiative, you don't plead. You don't ask, "Are we okay?" That's weakness. Instead, you add pressure. You adjust their responsibilities. You restrict access to key decisions. You tighten control over resources. You change incentives so that loyalty rewards them and betrayal destroys them, not as punishment, but as design. He saw this clearly in military structures. The most effective rulers never allowed one general or advisor to hold so much power that their betrayal could topple everything. He praised Ferdinand of Aragon for constantly rotating allies, keeping all factions uncertain, never letting one rise too high. This wasn't paranoia, it was engineering. To Machiavelli, power was not about fear, it was about shaping behavior through systems. In the modern world, it means this: never give one partner complete control. Build redundancy. If someone's energy shifts, pull one privilege, delay one decision, restructure one role, and watch. Do they step forward with clarity, or do they pull further back? Their reaction will expose their intent, because betrayal almost always reveals itself first in small ways. Conversations get vague. Compliments grow excessive. Initiative fades. Independence rises quietly while transparency disappears. They stop sharing what they once shared. You sense they're building something in silence, and you are not part of it. That is not paranoia. That is pattern. And Machiavelli's ultimate test was simple. Does this person still thrive because of your strength, or are they preparing to exploit your weakness? If it's the latter, then they're already gone, even if they haven't yet moved. But this is where most people fail. They react emotionally, they lash out, they accuse, they confront, but that is not the way. The Machiavellian path is silent recalibration. No explanations, no arguments, just quiet restructuring. You shift the board until the betrayer finds themselves cut off, exposed and irrelevant, without you ever speaking their name. Here's the deeper strategy. Build your world, So betrayal is always a downgrade. If leaving you costs more than staying, they'll never risk it. This is how you defend against treachery before it even happens. Not by trusting people to remain loyal, but by making loyalty the smartest option they have. And if, despite all of this, they still cross you, let them. Because if you've built correctly, their betrayal will leave them nothing to gain. Once you've identified a potential traitor, once the signs are clear and your instinct is certain, the worst mistake is reacting too soon. Betrayal requires calm. It requires precision. Strike too quickly and you lose the advantage. Strike emotionally and you lose control. Machiavelli was not just a strategist of power, he was a master of timing. He knew a threat is most vulnerable when it doesn't realize it's been exposed. That is when the betrayer keeps moving, keeps revealing themselves, still believing they are hidden. In The Prince, Machiavelli described how Cesare Borgia dealt with betrayal, not with immediate confrontation, but by letting it unfold until the evidence was undeniable, and the punishment final, public, and unforgettable. Why? Because exposing a traitor without eliminating them only makes them smarter. The principle is simple. Observe longer than you act, not to forgive, but to trap. If someone close to you is already drifting toward betrayal, their ego will betray them, they will overplay their hand, and when they do, you don't attack them head-on. You don't argue, you don't plead, you don't warn. You dismantle their position piece by piece. You isolate their influence, you restrict their access. You redesign the structure so they become irrelevant before they even realize they're gone. This is Machiavelli's art of preemptive exile, removing the danger without ever declaring war. History gave him plenty of lessons. Take Girolamo Savonarola, the Dominican friar who briefly ruled Florence after the fall of the Medici. He built his authority on fear and religious devotion. The people followed him as if he were a prophet. But when his favor with the Pope faded, he assumed the people's love would save him. It didn't. As Machiavelli wrote, "He who builds his power on the people must know how to change when the people change." Savonarola did not. He clung to sentiment. And when the tide turned, he was captured, tortured, executed, his ashes scattered in the Arno River. The lesson? Never mistake affection for protection. Build systems that hold even when trust does not. So, what do you do when you sense betrayal growing? You don't cut someone off loudly. That only grants them a stage. Instead, you quietly fade them out. Reassign duties, block the flow of sensitive information, bring in new trusted players beside them, redirect alliances, make their role optional, then invisible. They'll notice, but they won't T-act, because the clever traitor doesn't T-panic until their ground has already vanished. And by then, they'll have no leverage left. This is what Machiavelli called the preemptive purge, not a bloody removal, but a collapse of relevance. You don't attack them, you erase the stage they once mattered on. But when betrayal is public, when the damage is visible and dangerous, he advised something harsher. In his study of Roman rule, he observed that order was not preserved through soft measures, but through decisive punishment, rare but final. He wrote, "A prince must strike in such a way that he need not strike again. That means when betrayal becomes undeniable, your response must be surgical and permanent, not driven by revenge, but by demonstration. You don't threaten, you don't shout. You act so cleanly, so conclusively, that no one else dares to play the same game. So how does this look in your life? Say someone betrays your business, leaks your ideas, poisons your network. You could rage, or you could do what Machiavelli would counsel: cut their access, expose their weakness quietly, and let their failure become a warning. Not to humiliate them, but to reinforce why loyalty matters. Because you don't need to destroy people to win. You just need to make betrayal look like the stupidest move they ever made. And finally, Machiavelli insisted that once a traitor is neutralized, you must erase their presence entirely. He wrote, "When taking a state, a conqueror must do all injuries at once." What does this mean? It means don't leave fragments, don't keep their name alive in your circle, don't revisit the wound, don't leave the bridge half burned. You end the chapter completely, because a known traitor left in memory invites imitation. But a traitor who disappears without trace, that sends the strongest signal of all. Loyalty is expected, betrayal is erased. Now we move from principle to practice because understanding these rules is one thing and surviving by them is another. You must design a life, a business, a circle and a strategy so that betrayal becomes not merely punishable but pointless. And to do that, you need a set of practical rituals, structural habits and quiet tests you run constantly. First, codify who sits at the center of your world and why. Write down the exact dependencies you need people to have on you and the precise privileges they must earn to keep, because dependence built on value, not sentiment, is the only kind that survives temptation. And that starts with clarity of roles. Make responsibilities explicit, measurable and reversible so that when someone's behavior shifts, you have a non-emotional reason to alter their access, not a vindictive one, but an architectural one. And because human loyalty bends to interest, your job is to make loyalty the rational economic choice. Second, build redundancy into every critical system. Friends, partners, vendors, information sources, decision-making nodes. Never consolidate critical knowledge or control in a single pair of hands. Rotate responsibilities regularly, cross-train key players, and make sure no one person is both gatekeeper and executor. When access is distributed, betrayal becomes expensive and awkward rather than decisive. Third, institutionalize testing. Small, controlled friction points that reveal true preference. These are not traps in the malicious sense, but deliberate inconveniences that show who values the mission when it costs them something. Ask for a difficult favor, delay a payment, withhold an expected perk. Create a pressure moment that requires initiative. Observe who adapts, who complains, who smiles and schedules a meeting, who disappears. The ones who pay the cost quietly are the ones you can keep close. Fourth, master the art of information control. Never broadcast your vulnerabilities. Never share future plans without compartmentalized access. Use the principle of least privilege. Only give people the information they need to act today, and require clearance for what matters tomorrow. Those who build in public and boast about future moves are either naive or dangerous, and those who hoard knowledge under the guise of loyalty are often testing how irreplaceable they are. Make transparency conditional and earned. Fifth, create layered incentives that reward loyalty structurally. Equity that vests over time and with performance, privileges that unlock only when obligations are met, reputational benefits that are public and tied to continued service. When someone calculates defection, they must weigh not only immediate gain, but the long-term structural loss of trust, income, and position. Sixth, rehearse disengagement. Quietly. Have pre-mapped pathways for reducing someone's influence without drama. That means alternative reporting lines. Neutral third parties who can absorb responsibilities and public narratives that normalize redistribution of duties. People must be moved like chess pieces, not scandalized like criminals. Seventh, practice periodic reality checks on your own emotions. The most dangerous soft spot is your nostalgia for past loyalty. Keep a ledger of objective behaviors, not memories, so decisions are taken from facts, not feelings. When you feel the urge to forgive because they used to be different, read the ledger. Eighth, use language as an early warning system. People who are drifting will change pronouns, move from we to I, start framing successes as personal rather than collective, and begin referencing networks and opportunities that exclude you. Catch the shifts in speech patterns and treat them as data, not drama. Ninth, cultivate a culture of constructive dissent. Make it safe and expected for people to disagree with you publicly in controlled forums. Loyalty that requires suppression is suspicious. Loyalty that includes the freedom to object is stronger because it forces truth into the open. Those who never risk disagreement are likely auditioning for exit. 10th, prepare the public signal. When disloyalty becomes visible, your response should be proportionate, clear, and final. Remove access, reassign authority, and communicate the change as governance, not vengeance. People need to see the rule enforced without spectacle. This reduces rumor, reduces retaliation, and teaches everyone the cost of betrayal. Beyond structure, you must be psychologically prepared. Train yourself to act like an engineer of relationships, not a playwright. Meaning, stop crafting narratives where betrayal is a moral failure to be forgiven and start seeing it as a systems failure to be redesigned. When someone defects, it is not just a character flaw, it's a sign that incentives, checks, or design are insufficient. Learn to ask the right questions. What did this person gain by staying? What do they gain by leaving? Who else benefits from the shift? Where would they go? What weaknesses in our architecture does this exploit? Answer these quickly and objectively. Use historical analogies as diagnostic tools rather than excuses for cruelty. Study cases where leaders survived because they anticipated and neutralized betrayal, and where leaders fell because they assumed past allegiance, guaranteed future fidelity. Use those stories to inform policies, not to fuel paranoia. Keep your circle intentionally porous. Allow new people in, but only after probationary periods and demonstrated contributions. Freshness prevents entitlement, and probation converts strangers into proven allies. Importantly, maintain escape hatches for those who leave honorably. Allow an exit that preserves dignity for the few you hope to keep aligned, while making sure an honorable exit is still costly enough to dissuade opportunists. People will sometimes outgrow alignment, and when they do, you want them to leave with respect rather than vendetta. Apply the same architecture to romantic relationships. Protect shared assets, structurally make mutual commitments explicit, keep separate accounts for critical resources, and never let one partner alone control everything that would be fatal if taken. Love is a human currency that can be spent or saved, but structural binding, legal, financial, and reputational, makes betrayal a poor investment. In business, codified decision rights in charters create independent audit functions and require dual sign-offs for sensitive moves. In startups, avoid single-founder control of all voting shares until trust is proven. Instead, distribute governance so that no personal fall is systemic. In politics, rotate confidants publicly. Keep your inner circle functional but not sacrosanct, and build institutions that outlast individuals. The man who trusts structure over faces survives the storms of allegiance. Remember the timing lesson. Evidence is often best gathered covertly and exposure timed for maximum deterrent. But timing must be ethical and legal. Observe, document, and move decisively when you can make the structural change irreversible, not vindictive. When you must act publicly, let your response be surgical and symbolic. Remove access, show the steps you took to protect the system, and close the chapter completely. Never reopen it. Erase mentions, revamp roles, and allow memory to fade. The absence of the betrayer is your strongest message. Yet don't confuse erasure with ignorance. Maintain records privately for legal or historical reason. But for your culture, treat the betrayal as closed to prevent martyrdom or fame for the transgressor. Cultivate friends who are not sycophants but not opportunists, people who would publicly defend you when it matters because they've already paid the price of loyalty. Look to their past to predict their future. Who stood by them? Who did they stand by? People repeat patterns. If they abandoned someone in crisis, expect them to repeat. Be cautious with converts. Those who arrive at your side after switching frequently have a habit of switching again. Make every major commitment a test. When someone asks for deep trust, require demonstration, small, meaningful sacrifices that show willingness to risk for the cause, because only those who will actually pay will be worth keeping. Use ceremonial acts as stress tests. Unexpected crises, surprise deadlines, or voluntary hardships reveal character far more honestly than polished interviews. Build rituals of accountability, monthly reviews, 360-degree feedback, and public commitments that make shirking visible and costly. When betrayal is systemic, tackle incentives, change reward systems, reassign networks, and make defection strategically unattractive. This is not manipulation, but sound management. Resist the temptation to moralize. Calling someone ungrateful or evil wastes energy. Instead, rewrite the game they are playing so the smart move is to stay. Parallel to structural defense, prepare your mind. Train for emotional austerity because reacting with fury or shame surrenders the strategic advantage. Rehearse calm responses. Have playbooks for common betrayal scenarios and test them in tabletop exercises so your gut response is pre-trained and measured. Keep confidence to advise, but not to inflame. A small council of trusted, independent advisors who will tell you the truth without reward stabilizes judgment. Make legal protections non-negotiable. Contracts, NDAs, non-compete clauses where appropriate. These are not distrust. They are templates for predictable behavior. Finally, cultivate a public persona of competence rather than invulnerability. People who believe you are fragile prey to predators and opportunists, but those who perceive you as steady, prepared, and governed by rules are less tempting targets. If someone still betrays, despite all these measures, let them go and make their exit consequential in the market of reputation. Close doors gracefully but firmly document breaches, inform necessary parties, and allow the consequence to be a lesson not for vengeance, but for deterrence. Over time, these practices compound. Your circle becomes self-selecting for those whose incentives align, your structures create friction for opportunists, and your culture rewards those who prove loyal by cost and action rather than lip service. The goal is not to be loved by all, but to be unassailable by most, so that betrayal becomes an irrelevant act, a futile strike against armor, a momentary noise that collapses on itself. Power, in the deepest sense Machiavelli taught, is not the result of intimidation alone, but of architecture, timing, and sober foresight. Build those things, test them daily, and you will find that the three warning signs, shadow obedience, overcommunication without clarity, misaligned evolution, and the bonus sign of loyalty without roots, stop being surprises and start being signals you interpret and act upon like any other piece of operational intelligence. And when you do that consistently, betrayal ceases to be an earthquake and becomes a weather event you are prepared for.